Okay.
Welcome, everybody. My name is Mina Jane, and I'm the director of the Ashland Public Library. But for today, I'm a huge fangirl. We have Meljean Brook here, who is also Milla Vane, and we have lots and lots to talk about. But before we
So
get
much.
to that, I just wanted to let you know that that we are recording this. This is also live on Facebook, so people can ask questions in both of those places. Just put your questions in the chat, on the Q&A in Zoom or on Facebook, and I will take care of making sure that Maljean or Milla, one of you, answers. I'd like to thank the Friends of the Ashland Library who support all of our programming. We couldn't do this kind of stuff without them. And I want to say also that you can buy signed books from Meljean from Bank Score Books. She sent this amazing bookplate to them. So I will put the link in the chat for that for anybody who would like to purchase her book for this event. Books, any books, you can buy any of her books, any of her backlist. So again, I'm going to be super professional, and
I'm not.
I'm kind of paid to be, but I'm not going to be. So, anyways, I'm just so excited that when I reached out to Meljean, she immediately said yes to doing this, and we had been reading her book, A Heart of Blood and Ashes, for our romance, one of our romance book clubs. I have several, and I have been reading Meljean's steampunk books for a long time, partly because one of her characters is named Mina, so I just had to do it. And and I found out that when in doing this that Meljean and I have some things in common, some things not so much. One is that she grew up on 80s fantasy movies, as did I, Princess Bride, Willow, all of those. Maybe we'll talk about it. But she also was an accountant, so that is where So I'm just going to hand it over to you, Meljean, and say, welcome, thank you so much for being here, and please tell us a little bit about yourself and your most latest book.
Well, I mean, I do have to say the accounting didn't last very long. While I was an office manager at a construction company, I started writing some Batman, Wonder Woman fan fiction. And I mean, when you do the alt tab thing to like go between screens, so I was supposed to be like working, but no, I was writing Batman and Wonder Woman fan fiction on the other screen. So so that's not too much of a divergence. I wasn't an accountant. I wasn't in accounting for very long. I don't know. I am not a super interesting person. I grew up in the boonies, watching a lot of 80s movies, and that's my life. No, no, that's not quite it. But yeah, so I got my start writing fan fiction, and I think the story's been out there for a little while, but it was in 2005. My editor from Penguin, well, she wasn't my editor then, but I got an email from an editor at Penguin who said, I've been reading your fan fiction. Do you have anything original? And I said, I've been working on something. And she said, well, let me see it. And that was the first part of what eventually ended up being Demon Angel, but it wasn't quite ready yet. But she was like, it's okay. Why don't you write a novella for me, and we'll stick you into this anthology with Laura Lee and Shiloh Walker and Emma Hawley, and I was like, yes. And so that was kind of how I started writing, and that's all I've been doing ever since. All I do is write. No, I mean, basically, actually, that is true, but that's my entire life. So not an exciting bio.
Well, I think that as a reader, we like that because then you have more books for us to read. So let me ask this: what got you on the road to what led you to romance in particular, or generally, I should say, and then fantasy, paranormal, and or steampunk? Because those are sort of varied genres.
Well, I can tell you, I was 8 years old and I picked up Carol Mortimer's Only Lover, Harlequin Presents number 502, and I read it. And like looking back, this is like a terrible book, right? But I mean, I was like, wow. And so I just started reading, and my family is one where I have never like not lived in a house where they're not just like bookshelves that are packed. Like growing up, like our bedroom, my dad had like bookcases in there for his books, because there were so many books that there had to be more bookcases. And so, and he had everything in there too. He would just go to Goodwill and buy like a box of books and bring them in and then read them. And then I don't really even know what happened to all of them, but then he primarily read like science fiction and Westerns, like Louis L'Amour and Edgar Rice Burroughs, and that type of like pulp sci-fi that they always look so nice because they had like these long series, and like when you have the whole series on there, it's like, oh look, I mean they're all match. And so I read a bunch of those. Like I worked my way through there, but at the same time, a lot of like romances would come in with it, and he'll read everything, so it wasn't like ever a big deal for us. Like I have four sisters and one brother, and so it was never like a big deal for us to be reading anything. The only like book I was ever told I couldn't read was I think I was like 11, and it was Stephen King's It, and my mom was like, no, you shouldn't read that yet. And of course, I read it and then got so scared I put it down at the part where the boy's being chased by a werewolf monster, and it took me like a long time to pick it back up again. But I eventually did read it like when I was 12 or something, and that was not super smart, but we lived in the boonies, and so we had to like walk a long way through the woods to get home from every day. So like right after reading it, like running down that long driveway every day, you would think it would like turn me into a track star or something, but no, like, that's not what happened. I never even running is like the worst thing ever. But
you'd be terrible for those scary movie type of things.
But I mean, I think that growing up in the woods too is also part of like my whole development as a writer. Like, I mean, we just were always outside and doing things and making up things, and so. And I just never grew out of it. Basically, I haven't actually turned into an adult. I'm still that little kid running through the forest. So.
Well, you take us on that journey with you. So, I find your writing to be so inclusive. Like I just want to be in the story. I think that's so awesome. So let's talk. I'm going to talk about the steampunk for a little bit, because was that the first thing you wrote, or the first genre, or was it the paranormal?
No, the paranormal was the first one I wrote, and that was kind of actually directly out of the fan fiction. Like I was writing some Justice League fan fiction, and you can kind of still see little bits of how that went into the Guardian series, because you've got like your team of superheroes, basically, each with their own superpower. And the reason why that ended up being like the Guardian series as it was is I was taking a graduate course in literature, and it was Milton, and so I started bringing in some of this stuff from Milton because I mean it's fun, and I thought it was like a good way to form a basis for what I was doing. But I really love like vampire fiction and things like that. I always have fairy tales, werewolf stories, vampire stories. I've always enjoyed that. So it was my kind of way of bringing everything under one mythology, and so it was a lot of fun to create.
Well, it's a lot of fun to read. Kelly asks along those same lines, will Into the Light with the romance subplot cut from Guardian Demon ever be released, or The Unquiet Dust? Okay if no, I'm just curious. And she has another one thing, which I'll say in a second. So those two questions first.
Okay, so Into the Light, yes, it's still on my to-do list. It's just that in 2014 I burned out pretty badly, and so there were a lot of stories that I had planned to write, and I just never got back to them. So I don't have a date for any of those. The Unquiet Dust was kind of a side story for steampunk because there was a couple that I had written into the Kraken King, and I never really intended to tell their story, but I was like, and the same thing with Scarsdale's story. I still have that in the back of my head, but especially the steampunk has just my brain just went splurt. I think I wrote that to somebody on Twitter the other day. My brain went splurt, and so it hasn't like unsplurted yet. It has not germinated a new version of what it was. And so yes, at some point I do really hope to get those out, and especially Into the Light is like half written. So I mean, it's like sitting there waiting for me to come back to it. It was just, it didn't happen at that time.
Well, we will read whatever you write whenever you write it. In fact, Kelly says she's fine with the delay on a Dance of Smoke and Steel and not to stress about it. And I agree with her. You have to write when you write. Things happen.
Oh, you guys. Yeah, it's, I mean, I know it's been like a rough year for everyone. It's just been, this has not been my favorite year. I'll tell you guys. Getting a divorce, and it's been not fun. So, but I mean, the interesting thing about it is that a friend of mine asked, does this like make it harder to believe in or write romance? And I'm like, no. And in fact, the funny thing about it is I would say that romance is what like made me like, in a way, stand up for myself and to realize what is okay and what isn't okay. And I mean, obviously not only romance, but there's that sense of, there is this maybe not happily ever after for things, but in relationships there are things that should be done, and I think we do a lot of that in romance. And so like it reflected strangely in my life, where it didn't make me believe less in the happily ever after. In fact, it made me more conscious of exactly how relationships should work when they're healthy, and what can lead to a happily ever after, if anything.
I'm so glad you said that, though, because I know, because I can't write for anything, but like I love reading, and for me it's a total escape. To find the right book at the right time can take you out of your own situation, I guess, or even if it's not bad, it just takes you away, Calgon kind of thing. And I feel like your books really do that, because they're also paranormal. So it's not even real, it's not even like something that is going to happen up the street, it's
like a step aside from everyday reality, where yeah.
And I wonder if going through the pandemic and what you're going through, did it help your writing or did it hinder it, and were you reading more because of it?
I was reading less. I would say less new stuff. I really turned to comfort reads, and I think that's probably true of a lot of people, that they just turn to comfort reads. For me, that's like Pride and Prejudice fan fiction, some romances that I really stick to, or like old Dean Koontz books, that kind of thing. So yeah, I mean, I forgot actually what the lead-in part of the question was, but yeah, I mean, I wasn't reading more, and I think I will say that I wish that I had like writing advice for like going through, like how to keep writing as you're going through emotional upheaval, and I don't really have that. I think it's very, very difficult to write as you're going through that, or at least I find that. And so I would say to anyone, if you're having trouble writing and focusing and getting the words out, don't beat yourself up over it. I do think that in the long run, it will make my writing better. I mean, how can you not? Like every single thing I've gone through in my life feels like it has been a learning experience that has eventually ended up in a book. I mean, there are things in Demon Angel that I look at now and I'm like, and not just like, there's the writing technique, which of course gets better over time, but also the things that you learn and the things that you realize about society and interrelational, like give and takes, and people in general. you know, all of that goes into the books, and I think it does make the books richer as you go along. And and I think that the hard part maybe is not becoming cynical, especially as you're writing romance, because you still have to get that happily ever after, and the trust that these things will, that the world, that I would say, I mean, this is like a very broad statement, but that the world gets better as it goes along. And that's, I think, the true of romance too, is that for every book, the world is a better place after the book takes place than within that world than it was before. And so there's like a little slice of the world getting better. And I think holding on to that while the world's like falling apart around you is a very difficult thing. But yeah, I mean, I think that probably romance writers especially are very tenacious in holding on to that little bit of, yes, it's going to work out, it's going to be okay, we're going to get there.
I find that really interesting because you know, so many books have have really difficult situations going on in the world. That's part of the world building. But the couple, the characters are the thing that I always go back to, because, you know, once they're together and they trust each other and they are, you know, communicating well and all of that, they change each other's world to a degree that is really comforting to me.
Right. And I think there is something like, I think there's always, you know, that I think a lot of people, you know, outside the romance genre especially, see it as especially the heroine, you know, in a male-female relationship, conforming to whatever the male desires or whatever. But I think there is a lot more give and take in that kind of good romance than there is otherwise. And it's not that they, at least in my books, you know, it's not that they are incomplete without each other, you know, like the you complete me thing, but at the same time it is. And it's like a weird, mushy space where that relationship takes place, where everything fits perfectly and they complement each other and they strengthen each other. And I do not know where I'm going with that, but I mean, I think that's the gist of it, is that they do, you know, rub off on each other and make each other better people, I think. But it's not necessarily, I would hope, that they were like incomplete or they can't, I mean, I love the idea that they can't like live without each other, but it's in a sense of, if they hadn't known each other, that they would still be people who are functioning in some way. Although it is really romantic, you know, when especially the hero is like, you know, I'm just like, without her, I'm just like dead. I can't function. He can't eat. You know, she like sees him like 3 months later, and he's like hasn't shaved, and he's like, you know, he's like lost a lot of weight. Oh, that's the best. Oh, yeah.
That is the best.
I think I just like heroes who suffer. And so I like the suffering part when the heroes suffer.
What is that?
But
I mean, like, to me, like, that's a good question. Like, how do you make, you know, like, have that aspect of somebody suffering for love or for the world or whatever, but make it realistic enough that it's not evil?
Yeah, like, I think that just comes down to the characters too, in that, at least in my books, for me, like, the most important component of their characters, whether it's the hero or heroine, is like this element of kindness and not like deliberately being cruel. Although, I mean, I have exceptions, like Maddox in A Heart of Blood and Ashes, you know, when he first sees Yvonne, and he's like horrible, you know, to her, because he thinks that she was part of his parents' murder. Or there's like Lilith from Demon Angel, and she's like this demon who has been making sure that people go to hell for like, you know, 1,000 years or something like that. And yet she's very careful not to actually, like, she goes after the bad people, but she's very careful not to actually hurt people who are not deserving of it. So so there is, I think, an element of kindness that I have to put in all of my characters to actually believe that at the that they can actually like function together, that they aren't going to, although they might hurt each other, they aren't going to deliberately hurt each other, you know, or in a way that isn't, you aren't able to come back from.
Yeah. It is hard to come back from true
Cruelty. Yeah.
Yeah. So we will talk more about the individual books in a second, but Sarah asks, can you talk about the different writing names? Was that a publisher suggestion?
No, that was my suggestion. So I started out as Meljean Brook, and I wrote the Guardian series, and I wrote the Steampunk series. And it was around 2010, 2012 when I started getting the idea of writing this Barbarian series. And I knew it would be a darker series. I knew that the world would be darker. I knew that some of the things that they would do would be darker. So I told my publisher that I thought, you know, I want the people who are used to Meljean Brook's books to not go into it thinking it was going to be exactly the same thing. And so I did ask that we use the pen name instead. And originally it was going to be like an anonymous pen name, but that didn't work out well. It was kind of like from the very beginning, it was accidentally posted in a publisher's marketplaces, you know, Meljean Brook writing as Milla Vane. I was like, oops. so no, otherwise I would have been secret. I would have been like here, like in the dark, like, but no, I'm out as Meljean and Milla. So.
So is there a particular, is in either one of them, do you enjoy writing as Meljean more than Milla? Or, I mean, like, is there something that, no?
No. No. I mean, I love the steampunk. I love the Guardians. I love the Barbarians. There's not one book or series or style that I like more than any other. It's just like a different way of expression, I think.
Oh, that's a good way of putting it. I was going to say, it's very rare that you get to hear people say, I love barbarians.
Except in romance, where it seems like everything, like Ice Planet Barbarians, these barbarians, you know, we just love barbarians.
And especially a redeemed barbarian. I mean, there's really nothing better than that. And because Carolyn said that she loves heroes who suffer too. So I think that.
Oh, Carolyn, yes.
Right? So then Gloria asks, I love your steampunk books, which I also do. Will there be more, or have you finished with that genre? And I'm curious too.
No, I'm not finished mentally with it. I did burn out, and I've had some trouble, like, I guess, reorganizing how I'm going to approach it, because, well, I mean, 2016 happened. And when I first wrote the series, I think an important element of steampunk is the punk part, where there's some social critique or whatever is going on. And an important part of that for me was, okay, so in the steampunk series in England, they were colonized, and the people who had money like went off to the New World, and basically they lived in the New World, and the people who were left were oppressed and turned into laborers, and for like 200 years. And so they're called the buggers because they've been infected with nano agents. And the people, now that the colonists have been repelled, thanks to the Iron Duke, and so they're out of England, the people who left before are coming back, and they're trying to reclaim their old properties, their old, you know, everything that they had before. And because they've been holding on to this idea of what their aristocracy was and what their society was. And so they want to come back and take over everything again and say, you know, this is where we belong. But of course, you know, it's been 200 years and things have been happening there. So basically it was, and this was like in, you know, 2010 10 or whatever when I started reading it, and when I started writing it. And one of the things I had joked to myself and to friends, like basically the Bounders like mantra was like make England great again, or something like that. And so I feel like sometimes like maybe the line between punk and parody became a little bit too thin in the series, and I couldn't approach it anymore in the same way when things were so close to what they genuinely were in American politics and also worldwide politics. So I had to step back, and I'm still like mentally reorganizing how I'm going to approach it without making it seem like some very direct comment on American society, because although it is, because that's the purpose of steampunk and any kind of punk, because there's like different versions of steampunk and like magic punk and anyway. So I mean, there has to be that approach that is taken, and I haven't found yet a way that is critical and insightful in a way that isn't basically what's being said on Twitter every single day, and that doesn't really come off as a parody and as a direct like correlation to current events. So I'm kind of stuck. And
I mean, I think that's really insightful, because so many authors had to make some choices with the political world, and some people chose to like really take it on head on, and some people chose to like avoid it altogether, and there were a lot of people in the middle. So I think it makes a lot of sense to me that the world around you affects your writing as well.
And it genuinely does. I mean, I can say that everything, when I got married 21 years ago, it was to son of Indian immigrants, and it was like, I'm just like this girl from the boonies, and the things that I even like realized then and learned then, which was not, so I would say like even like everything that I learned there has went into my work. Everything that has changed culturally goes into my work, and it's just sometimes a struggle to figure out how to approach it and to put it in a way that fits the storytelling. And I haven't found a way with the steampunk yet. So I mean, I will come back to it. I really desperately want to come back to it. I want to tell Scarsdale's story, the blacksmith story, especially the blacksmith story, and the Unquiet Dust. But yeah, it might take a while for, I would say, things to kind of settle in my head and figure out how to do it. And it'll probably be that one day I like am sitting there and thinking, I'll have like the aha moment, and I'll be like, oh, that will work, and then I'll be like, okay, now I need to do this and somehow try to fit this in.
Well, Gail and I are both like, the blacksmith! Worth the wait. So I have a question about the steampunk objects, because I've been to like a bunch of like steampunk fairs, and like there's a person in Massachusetts who has a steampunk house, Bruce Rosenbaum. I don't know if you know him, but anyways, I did a tour of his house, and I was just like, oh my gosh. So how do you pick your steampunk objects? Because there's so many variations that you could choose from.
I think a lot of it is actual real objects. Like I tried to, for a lot of the like devices and things that show up, I tried to make them as close to something that actually had been invented at some point. And so there was just a lot of, looking through, Googling old inventions that didn't work out, old drawings. Like, obviously, I took a lot from Leonardo da Vinci's sketches of flying machines, and or like the clickety-clack typewriter that Mina had in my group. Somebody recently saw one of those ball typewriters, and they were like, was this what it was? And I was like, it was kind of like that. It was like a little bit different, but so these are things that were genuinely out there, or that have been, artists, like representations of certain machines. I can't think of anything that I actually like thought up myself. I mean, putting it together, in a certain way, sure, but and like whenever I needed to like finagle the details, nano agents, they're basically, they can do anything. They make everything work. So, but yeah, like everything that I can think of, there was probably either something that I had seen like as an artistic rendering, or a historical sketch, or something that was like easy to adapt, like the spider rickshaws or something. I have seen like this historical photo of this weird spider looking thing, and it was like this steam driven thing, and it never caught on because we don't have spider rickshaws running all over the place. But I thought that it would be fun to bring those things in, and so I did. Basically, that series was basically just like, what's going to be fun? Zombies, giant sharks, Kraken. Bring it all in. I mean, honestly, that's my entire world building. Like, that's how I world build everything. It's like, is it fun? Yes. Okay, here it is in the book. So that's it.
Gail has a question that she loves steampunk and wondered if any of it was, because so much of it has Welsh influence, was that intentional?
Yes and no. Like I am not like a historical, obviously I study history, and when I set something somewhere, and I studied quite a bit of history in terms of Great Britain and things, but because this series had so much to do with industrialization and class distinctions and colonization, and sorry, my iPad just decided to talk to me. Because there was so much of that going on, and I wanted to bring in, elements from real history where, there's the I don't even know, like the dominant type of little area and country and society over the one that's connected to it that is the smaller one. So, and that has been, maybe the resources have been utilized to support everything. And so, so the answer is yes and no. It wasn't necessarily like I thought I need to bring in Wales especially. It was more that the real history of Great Britain lent it to that, what I was doing with the steampunk really well.
Well, I'm going to just go to the chat a little bit because Gail says she loves the representation. Megan says, like dinosaurs. I'm not quite sure where that's coming from because I lost track of some of the conversation.
That was about what's fun. What do I put in the world building? Yeah, dinosaurs are fun, and that's why there are dinosaurs in the barbarian world. If I could put dinosaurs in anything, I would put dinosaurs in everything. I mean, really.
I'm more of a dragon person, but I can see that whatever D words, they work for me. And we'll talk about other D words as well in a second. Elizabeth says, years ago, the Museum of Science in Boston had an exhibit with small, not full-size models of all those inventions in Da Vinci's drawings. So cool. though I was surprised at the number of worn inventions. Anyway, so war
inventions. Yes, yes.
Well, it's, he was an all-around kind of guy.
yes, he was a true Renaissance man.
Okay, so I'm going to go on to the question that I have been waiting to ask you for 37 minutes. The reason we read A Heart of Blood and Ash was somebody in our romance book club said it has a bloody hand job in it. Let's speak about that.
Is that the D we're going to talk about?
Yes. It's the D. And you're freezing a little bit on and off, but we can still hear you.
Okay. Yeah, I'm on. It just told me my internet connection was unstable. It looks okay. So hopefully it will keep going.
Yeah, just keep going. I'm on back to the D word. Bloody hand job.
Okay, so for those of you who haven't read the book, this is kind of a spoiler. But the scene is that Maddox is the hero, and he thinks that even the heroine had something to do with his family's murders. And so when he meets her, so this is like one of my favorite scenes I've ever written. Not necessarily the bloody hand job, but her first, basically how he first meets her. She's pulled out of this carriage because he decides he's just gonna track her down and kill her. And she's on her way to go marry some old guy. And so he tracks down the carriage, and her brother's in there with her, and the brother pulls her out of the carriage, and he's like, oh, she's like this scrawny little nothing. And Maddox and the brother are kind of arguing, and then out of nowhere, Yvonne just stabs her brother in the back and kills him. And so she's got his blood all over his hands. And then Maddox is like, what? And then she's like, well, let's team up and kill my family. And he still doesn't trust her, but he's like, trying to, reestablish control and to dominate her. And so he's like, okay, so you've got to do this for me. And she's like, okay. So the bloody hand job is she still has her brother's blood all over her hands, and she gives him a hand job at that point. And actually, I like that scene too, because it's very funny in that he thinks that Maddox thinks that he's just dominating her and is in control of everything. And in the middle of it, she basically takes control because he's like, aroused and getting more excited, and he's like, oh, and she's enjoying her control over him too. So that's the bloody hand job. And it's actually, a lot of people are sold on this. They're like, what in the world is the bloody hand job? And so they go and pick up the book. And I don't know what that says about us as romance readers, but I like you all. This is what's going to get you to go pick up a book.
We were all sold on it as soon as you said that. Yeah, it does say a lot about us. We'll read anything, but I think that in terms of people that are long-term romance readers, sometimes it's good to have something a bit creative around the whole D word, sexuality, sex scenes, because, if you've read 1,000 books in your lifetime, you want something a little different.
Yeah, and I think it is very difficult to keep sex scenes like fresh and new. And honestly, the only thing I can say is they just have to be so rooted in character and who they are. And that's the only thing that can really keep them fresh and new, because the way that people approach sex is always going to be varying and different. And so as long as the characters are varying and different, then the sexual situations they're in are going to be. And also, not being afraid to maybe do something unusual or surprising or maybe gross. And actually, I did have someone tell me who read an early copy of the book like, she was like, you've got to take this out. They're going to, everybody's going to be like so grossed out by this that, it's horrible. And I was like, crying as I went to my editor. I was like, do we need to take this out? And she's like, no. So, I mean, sometimes it just means that you have to take the risks and do things that you think nobody is going to like and nobody's going to accept. But I think that readers appreciate that. I mean, of course, there's a line that we all draw of, this, like, I know that rubs right up against abuse and, issues of consent. Obviously, even did consent and she turned it around so she had power. But I mean, I know that it goes right up against that. And so I am not surprised when people are like, no, plus there's bodily fluids and things that, people just maybe don't want to read about that. Because yeah, blood and sex, I can see being a very touchy thing, but I don't know. I kind of liked it. It was like this, I don't know. I think it established very early in the book, as soon as you meet the hero and the heroine and they're together, you can see the kind of push-pull relationship they're going to have. And it's not going to be clean. It's going to be a very messy, difficult relationship where they have to go through these things. And so in terms of like announcing to a reader, this is what you're going to get with this book, I don't think any scene could have worked better than that. So I think that in general, again, in terms of sex scenes, that, is a good way to announce to a reader, have something early on, this is going to be light and funny, or this is going to be bloody hand jobs. And the first time they have sex, he brings her brother's head to her. I mean, it takes all kinds to populate the world.
That can be true love. She's been through a lot, I think. Okay, so I'm getting lots of comments in the chat, and Jen says that what I love is that while your stories can be darker or edgier, you create such amazing characters that I'm invested in everything that they do. I don't mind the differences because your characters and worlds are so amazing. And Megan says, it was so informative to each of the characters. I'm so glad you kept it in there. I agree. And Carolyn again says, all of your characters are so masterfully developed, and all of their actions, thoughts, and dialogue is so authentic. So to me, like, what I'm hearing is that the sex scenes are really incorporated, or they're part of the entire story. They're not just
right. Right. And I mean, look, I like me some porn without plot. I mean, I've been there in the fan fiction, section, like, give me this character, make them bang. I mean, but I think for especially a lot of like very long books, you can just have like, the break so they can bang. But at the same time, it does have to be rooted in character all the time, at least for me. Mm-hmm. And I think it's also, important because you can't skip the scenes, right? I mean, if you can skip a scene in a book, and then why write it in the first place? And so it's important to me that there is some character development or relationship development that takes place during the sex scene, so that it does fit into that overall romance and plot. Whenever I read about books where, they make clean versions where they take out the sex scenes, I'm just like, why did you write them in the first place if you can just take them out? And so that's my feeling about sex scenes. They have to be completely, enmeshed in the plot and the romance and the character.
Mm-hmm. Right. And I think, like you said, sex is part of life and people have sex. And so to not include it in a romance book especially, in some ways makes it not as realistic, maybe?
Yeah. I mean,
I mean, there are books
I
that don't
do.
have sex and there are romances, but for the
Yeah.
kind of book you're writing, you want the whole.
Yes. For the kind of book I'm writing,
Mhm.
um, especially because when I first conceived of the series, the Barbarian series, it was not even as much the barbarian world. My idea for the series was actually rooted in examining the ways in which um, sex can be used as kind of a power play, basically, and where sex is not always about romance, but sometimes it's about getting what you need or used politically. And I did back off of that a little bit because I brought more things in and that I wanted to look at. But I mean, I think that still is very much an aspect to the series, maybe not in A Touch of Stone and Snow, is with they don't have quite as much give and take in like it's not a power play between them. It's very much, you know, how much they're allowing themselves to be vulnerable to each other. And but between Maddox and Yvonne, it's, you know, absolutely, it's political. It's who has the power here, who has, you know, who are they going to be vulnerable with each other, and trust. I think so. So it's definitely not going to be something that is a huge part of every book, but it was definitely right there in my head when I was conceiving of the series.
Mhm. Well, and I like the fact that that in one scene you said so much, you know, like you said about the power and the trust and the political system at the time and where they were in their relationship. I mean, you know, in a few pages you told us so much about these characters in this world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it's rare that you get to do that much in a few pages. I think it says my internet connection is unstable, so sorry if I'm going in and out. A lot of times, like I overwrite all the time. I mean, I write some really long books, and that's across the board. I mean, Guardian series, Steampunk series. I mean, I always take like 10 words to say what probably other people can do in one word. But so it's really rare for me, I think, to get that much across in, you know, a single scene. But so that's probably another reason why it's my favorite scene, is because I was like, yes, that one worked out. It worked out. It did exactly what I wanted it to do.
Mm-hmm.
And it was also one of the things that as I'm writing, I often have a couple of scenes in my head, and then the rest of it I just like put them together.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I first conceived of that story, I had just a couple of scenes in my head, and the first one was where she stabs her brother, and that happened. And so he sees her. And another one was their first sex scene when he prematurely ejaculates, and basically he gets one thrust, and then she makes fun of his stamina, and that where she just eviscerates him regarding the stamina was like the line that I had wanted to write forever. And so it was like the one that kept in, even though the entire scene itself had kind of changed a little bit. I mean, he was I had originally envisioned it much earlier in their relationship when they're still very much, you know, fighting, and he was really mean to her, and it didn't quite turn out that way. But I kept that premature ejaculation and the bit about his stamina in there, and so that was fun. So basically, that was the entire book, was just she needs to stab him, and I mean she needs to stab her brother, and then make a joke about when he comes early. And so that was like 500 some pages to do all that.
Well, Fedora says, love that you commit to the bit, so to speak. Um, and a different question, because I could talk about this kind of stuff all day. Carolyn says, from Pasadena, you know how much she loves you and supports you and is so excited to see you. One of her favorite aspects of your books is when you have animals. Caleb in A Touch of Stone and Snow is my favorite, and the Hellhound in the Guardian series. What inspired? Sorry?
A Sir Pup.
They're-
He was one of my favorite characters too.
What inspired you to create them and make them characters in your books?
um, it was a little bit different for all of them. Like for Sir Pup, he's the hellhound who belongs to Lilith, the demon. And in that case, it was that I needed Lilith to have a friend, and she did have a friend in a vampire, but this was someone who came along later. But she's a character who is who can't trust anybody and is afraid to trust anybody. And but I needed to show that she had a relationship with someone or something that was a deep and genuine, caring relationship. And also he was just fun. He's this three-headed hellhound. He can grow to this enormous size or hide himself as a regular dog. And so he's just a fun character. And so it also adds a bit of that comedic aspect to it too, where, I mean, he's this like incredibly dangerous creature, but most of his scenes are actually kind of funny. And so it allows me to lighten. I mean, this is a book about free will and demons and angels and hell and the choices that people make, and yet there's this hellhound who's actually, pretty fun. And so that, I mean, so there's just a lot of things at play there where I needed her to have a relationship with something that was important and stable, and that she definitely cared for something. And I, like, in the Barbarian series, the first one that showed up was Shim in the Beast of Blackmore novella, who was a companion of Mala's. And that's because she was on a quest and she was basically alone. But I didn't want her to be completely alone. And she could have just a regular horse. But why have a regular horse when you can have like a super smart, super strong horse? And so, I mean, the only thing I didn't do was make him talk. Then he would have been Mr. Ed. That would just be weird. But I guess I could have given him like a telepathic like ability, but no, that's too much. So, and again, it was more that I needed to show her with a companion, and sometimes a difficult companion. But also there was this aspect within that story of she's there to tame the Beast of Blackmore. And her being a friend with this horse ties into the way that Kavik is able to understand what she really means by taming. It's not, putting him in chains or a rope. It's just being a trusted friend. And I think it's kind of the same thing with Cave in A Touch of Stone and Snow, in that Eric's is such a character who is outside of society. And so this way he has a companion who's there, who understands him, and it's kind of a reflection of him, but also enables the hero and heroine to have like this, he's basically their baby, And so there's that tie between them that, so that's important too. And I just like animal companions. I mean, like, again, the girl in the woods running around. I read every horse book, every book that featured a dog, So, yeah. So, I mean, of course, I'm going to put these things in, and in A Touch of Smoke and Steel, there's 3 more companions and a regular horse. I wish I could say that this horse was smarter, but I had already actually written him into a short story. So I was like, well, now I've got to keep him a regular horse. So, but we've got 3 others. So. And Shim.
So Gail wants to know if you have pets yourself.
I have cats. I have 2 cats, and they're actually only a year old. We had 2 cats for almost 20 years, and they both died in 2020, and so these are new cats that we got because we just love to have cats. So and I'm not a dog walker. So.
Yeah, well, I'm also a cat person, and very stereotypical librarian cat person. Jen says, thank you so much for this. I'm glad you're still thinking about all of the series, and I'm looking forward to the next book, whatever it is, whenever it is. Take your time and be well.
Oh, thank you.
Gail says, yay, cats rock. Sorry about the ones that crossed the Rainbow Bridge. And,
oh, thank you.
So I'd like to know, I know that, you know, the next book has been a bit delayed, but like what else is coming up for you?
I'm not sure yet. I would like to write, there's another 3 books in the Barbarian series for certain that I would like to write. But I mean, my life is kind of in flux right now, so we'll see when it's going to be. It might be that because I absolutely hate being late and missing deadlines. I might actually like write 1 or 2 completely before I approach my publisher and say, hey, I've got, you know, the next 3 books. And at that point, you know, if Berkeley wants to take them on, great. And if not, I mean, self-publishing is always an option. So I do want to continue the series. With book 3, like the first major story arc will be completed. And so even if I never end up writing more, like I can't see myself not writing more, but just in case, it will have like a good like stopping point. So that'll be good. But I would like to do the next 3. So.
We would like to read the next 3, and I'm seeing the same in the chat. And Gail, who loves the steampunk, wants to know who would play Mina and the Iron Duke in the Netflix special. And given that I have the same name, I feel like it should be me. But you know, he's a bit younger than me, so.
Oh, you know, when I first wrote it, it might have been oh my gosh, I'm completely blanking on her name.
We can crowdsource it.
Yeah, you know what? I can like post it somewhere. I have like when I write, and I always do like this collage of like images, and oh, I can't remember her name because this was like in 2010. Yeah, this was in 2010, and so like often it's like people who are popular then, like because their image will like stick in my head from some other source, and I can't remember now, but I know that yeah. So I'll try to post a picture of like how I imagine her, but. Okay. But I'm not really sure. Any kind of very active woman would be like just small, like a little fiery type of woman.
Well, that takes me out.
It takes me out too.
See, we had a lot in common. Oh gosh, Kelly says she's still so sad about Maddox horse.
Oh, yeah. You know, I have to tell you guys. I know I had a friend who was reading at the same time. She's like, you got to stop killing the animals. I'm like, look, the dogs are not going to die. Actually, that's a rule that I have established for all of these. If an animal is named, it's safe. So don't attach yourself to any animal who isn't named, because there's no guarantees at that point. Look, I'm not going to go around killing a bunch of animals, but I'm just saying like the ones who are named are safe. So, but any others are. I'm sorry. It's the same with people too. If they're not a hero or a heroine, I mean, don't become too attached. No.
Well, thanks for the warning. I will definitely be posting that all over the place.
No, I'm not. I'm not going to like go indiscriminately kill people, but there are, you know, this is a different series, so yeah, I will end up. Sorry, no spoilers. People are gonna die.
Well, it's a barbarian series. Kind of expect
It's a barbarian series.
I mean, are you talking about the demon series that Maddox is in?
Well, I guess I did kill people in that one too. Yeah, that was hard. There were a couple of characters who I really, really liked, but because it was served the story better to have them dead, I killed them. And it's always really hard to kill off some characters. And I mean, some by the time I get to kill them, I'm like, good riddance to you. But others, I'm just like, oh, I like you so much. I would like to keep you, but you serve the story better not alive. So you're going to be unalive very soon.
Unalive. I like that. Okay, there we go. All right, so I'm not seeing any more questions. So thank you so much for doing this. I have had a ball. I think people have as well. Feel free to let Meljean know what you thought about this program, because I will share the chat with you. Yeah, just thank you, and I hope that everything works out and that we have many more books in the future when you're feeling like writing.
Oh, thank you so much. And I mean, I am writing currently. It's just a very, very slow process, and I expect everything to start coming together soon. As soon as I move and get new house set up, I'm gonna be down. So that'll be good. And thank you, Carolyn and Catherine and Brooke and Gail and Carolyn and Megan. Oh, you know what? I love all you guys because I recognize all of you from like online. So I just want to say thank you so much. And honestly, your support and patience over, these delays has been so amazing. And I'm really, really grateful. And I'm very glad that you all have shown up and are here.
Well, I love that Gail loves us both. And Lori on Facebook says that we love your writing, don't stop. So.
Oh, thank you so much. No, I'm not going to stop. I honestly don't think I could stop, even if I tried. It would be like, I've always been writing and I always will be writing. And so don't worry about that. And thank you, Brooke, about the Kraken King, one of my comfort reads. That's probably one of my best ones too. So thank you. Thank you so much.
I was going to ask you if you could pick a favorite book, but I decided not to make you make that choice.
No, I mean, I do have, like, I would say, like, of all the books that I have written, I don't necessarily think I have a favorite, but Demon Moon is probably the one that's like closest to my heart in terms of like writing it. There was just a lot of that book that was very special to me. And now when I look back, I mean, there's like things I would revise to make the pacing better, to make certain, like I was a newbie at world building. And so like, there's some things that are maybe didn't come out as well as they should have, but probably that book is my baby. No, I'm kidding. It's not my baby, but that one is really special to me. So
thank you for that. Most people, anyways.
Hi, Jen.
so hard to pick, yeah. But Jen says Demon Moon, my first favorite.
Oh, Jen. Oh, hi, Jen. Maybe we'll see each other again at a conference. Jen has been around a very long time.
Yes, I've seen Jen at some of my other programs. So again, thank you all for being here. Have a wonderful day, and Meljean, we'll be in touch because now that I have your email, you're stuck with me. Oh, we probably shouldn't have recorded that part. All right. Good night. Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.